saw that I set up the spooky background. I am hoping to get some filming done this weekend so that I can release some spooky videos for you guys. So definitely let me know what you'd like to see down below. Chapter 2, Hotel Hauntings. And then it goes right to a boat. What? The RMS Queen Mary. The retired British ocean liner was both bigger and faster than the Titanic, and even more luxurious. With 12 decks featuring an Art Deco design and intricate woodwork polished to a high gleam. It was with good reason that she was the preferred mode of transportation for royalty and celebrities crossing the Atlantic. The Queen Mary embarked on her maiden voyage in May of 1936, steaming from Southampton, England to New York City in a little more than 5 days. 2 years later, she set a record for the fastest Atlantic crossing, which stood until 1952. But in early 1940, the Queen Mary was repurposed as a troop ship to aid in the Allies' efforts of World War II. Painted camouflage gray and nicknamed the Gray Ghost, the ship's accommodations were increased from 2,140 to 5,500. The capacity would eventually rise to nearly 10,000, and she began making trips all over the globe, from Southampton to Sydney, was living at the Chelsea in 1959. Many guests have reported seeing the Vain Woman, a Victorian-era spirit who checks her reflection in a fifth-floor mirror. Goodness. The hotel also has tragedy in its past. Most famously, Nancy Spungen was stabbed to death on October 12th, 1978, in room 100. Oh, I didn't even know. I didn't even put that together. She had been sharing it with her boyfriend, Sex Pistols bassist Sid Vicious. A knife Spungen had given to Vicious had been plunged into her abdomen. Police arrested him for her murder, but he died of a heroin overdose before the case ever went to trial. She is said to still be haunting the area around her old room, where mysterious noises and unexplained changes in temperature have been reported. Another ghost, referred to by residents as Mary, haunts the hotel's hallways. The story goes that Mary was the widow of a man who perished aboard the Titanic in 1912. Distraught over his death, she hung herself in her room. She was seen as recently as 1996 by soprano star Michael Imperioli, who lived at the Chelsea for 2 months and once claimed to see her crying in an 8th-floor corridor. Oh, one of my favorite destinations that I've never been to. I do have quite the bucket list. Someone mentioned that to me and said I should travel. Man, I wish I could, with my mom, and then, I just bought a house. It's kind of hard, but man, I've got so many places I want to see. One of them being New Orleans. The first incarnation of a property on this French Quarter was the site of the Théâtre d'Orléans, which opened in 1815. After a fire the next year completely destroyed it, a new one was built in 1817 by British-born architect Henry Latrobe, the designer of the United States Capitol. He added the Orleans Ballroom. The 1,300-seat theater soon became one of the country's premier opera hubs, and together with the ballroom served as an important forum for Creole society, as well as the setting for some of the most prestigious social events in New Orleans. In 1881, the Sisters of the Holy Family, the first black religious order in the U.S., purchased the theater and ballroom. They converted them into a convent and a school for African-American girls called St. Mary's Academy. The order then purchased an adjacent lot and built an orphanage for the girls called St. John Birchman's Asylum for Negro girls. In 1964, the nuns sold the building to a Baton Rouge developer who converted the property at the corner of Bourbon and Orleans Street into a hotel and ballroom. Today, the Bourbon Orleans is said to house more than 20 ghosts, including a wounded Confederate soldier who limps along the hallways of the 3rd and 6th floors. Several others are said to be the spirits of children and nuns who perished during the yellow fever epidemic of 1897. Guests have reported hearing the laughter of children in the halls. The ghost of a little girl chasing after her ball is often seen on the 6th floor. And in the ballroom, the spirit of a woman is often seen dancing by herself under the chandeliers. But the hotel's most notorious spirits frequent room 644, where, according to legend, a nun committed suicide. Guests and staff have heard tortured screams coming from the room, and some patrons have reported waking up in the middle of the night to find a nun standing over their beds. Oh, heck to the no, I'd be right on out of there. The Emily Morgan Hotel in San Antonio, Texas. The 13-story building stands on ground where in 1836 Mexican troops fought Texas forces at the Battle of the Alamo. The old mission is just across E. Houston Street from the hotel. Opened in 1926 as the Medical Arts Building, the Emily Morgan housed a hospital and offices for doctors and dentists until it was converted in 1976. 8 years later, it underwent another renovation that transformed the space into a hotel. A neo-Gothic colossus that rises high over downtown, The structure has several distinguishing features, including a 5-story tower with an observation deck. Sorry, I lost my place because I looked over at the picture. A copper roof with wooden ribs, and lining its upper reaches, an array of gargoyles, with each figure carved to portray a different medical ailment. What? Oh, goodness. Hundreds of men lost their lives at the Alamo. Many others died in the building when it was a hospital, a facility that had its own morgue and crematorium. The history of both the area and the building have given rise to an abundance of ghost stories. Hotel guests say the phone will ring in the middle of the night, and there'll be no one on the other end of the line. Doors sometimes slam shut with no apparent reason. Elevators will skip requested floors and stop on different levels. Attendants have reported beds being unmade moments after a room has been serviced. And a sales manager who once had to spend the night returned to find the bathtub filled with blue water. Well, at least it wasn't red, girl. More ominously, ghosts have reported hearing hospital carts rolling down the corridors past their doors. Creepy. Others have seen a mysterious white woman walking the hallways, and a strong sense of antiseptic odor permeates the top floor, which was once part of the hospital. The Emily Morgan adheres to the traditional hotel superstition of not having a 13th floor. This means that the building's top level is actually the 14th. But the hotel takes the superstition one step further. There is no room 1408. The sum of the digits in that room number, 1 plus 4 plus 0 plus 8 equals 13. No one is taking any chances at this hotel. I was hoping this one would be in here. My niece went here recently, and she brought me back a rock, which Sean thought was so dumb, but I collect rocks, so I didn't think it was dumb. And I know I'm teetering off, but her friend was like, isn't that illegal? And she was like, then turn around, because I'm bringing my aunt a rock. So I have a rock from the Stanley, but I want to go there. There's so many airplanes tonight, oh my goodness. I don't live near the Air Force Base anymore. Sheesh. In 1974, author Stephen King and his wife Tabitha temporarily relocated from Maine to Boulder, Colorado. King, who'd already written Carrie and Salem's Lot, was trying to come up with an idea for his third book. On the advice of friends, he journeyed into the mountains to stay at the Stanley, a sprawling resort hotel located 75,000 feet above sea level. I'm sorry, 7,500 feet. Goodness. I made that really high, didn't I? Extra zero. When the couple checked in, they discovered they were the only guests there. The Stanley was shutting down for the winter. They ate dinner in the empty dining room, and Stephen King roamed the Stanley's long hallways alone. By the time they checked out the next day, he knew he had an idea for a book. The first draft of The Shining only took him 4 months to finish and became his first hardcover bestseller. His inspiration was no accident. The Stanley is reportedly teeming with spirits, including the ghost of a cowboy and the spirits of children who play in the halls. The ghost of the Stanley's builder, inventor F.O. Stanley of Stanley Steamer fame, is said to wander the billiard room and bar, while the spirit of his wife, Flora, plays the hotel's piano. The ghost of Elizabeth Wilson, a former housekeeper, is said to frequent room 217, where she was seriously injured, meals a day included. That's cheap. 4 nights later, she walked out to an exterior staircase and shot herself in the right temple with a .44 caliber American Bulldog pistol that she had purchased the day before. The hotel's electrician found her body on the morning of November 29th. The San Diego County coroner determined her wound was self-inflicted. The reason that brought Morgan to the Dell, a sweeping Victorian beachfront hotel built in 1888 and graced with red roofs and exterior of pristine white, are murky. She was possibly distraught following a lover's quarrel or waiting for a man who never showed. Regardless, once she checked in, she never checked out. Guests and the staff say they've seen the spirit of a beautiful dark-haired woman, and visitors staying in Morgan's old room on the 3rd floor have reported flickering lights, TVs that turn off and on untouched, and doors that open and close all on their own. Let's see, how many more do we have here? Oh, quite a few. There's quite a few. Okay, there we go. Alright, the next one is the Marshall House. The elegant, low-slung 4-story hotel opened in 1851. This is in Savannah, Georgia, by the way. It included a dining room, a bar, public and private parlors, shops, and a carriage turnaround. An ornate, covered iron veranda runs most of the length of the 2nd floor. The exterior is Philadelphia pressed brick. After the peaceful surrender of Savannah to General William T. Sherman's army in December of 1864, Union troops briefly used the hotel as a hospital. And during Reconstruction, Joel Chandler Harris, author of the Uncle Remus stories, lived here while working as a reporter for the Savannah Morning News. The Marshall House operated as a hotel for the better part of a century until it closed in 1957. The street-level floor was divided up into retail spaces. The upper floors were sealed off and became havens for birds, bats, and rodents. The building underwent a thorough restoration in 1998, preserving original wood floors, staircases, brick walls, and fireplaces, and was returned to its original use. Some of the artifacts found during the renovation are displayed in glass cabinets along the 2nd and 3rd floors. An 1837 portrait of Marshall House's founder, Savannah businesswoman Mary Marshall, clad in a black dress and a white bonnet, hangs in the lobby. Shortly after the hotel reopened, a young girl told her father she had met a lady dressed like Marshall in an upstairs hallway, and this was the beginning of the building's connection to the supernatural. The Marshall House recently ranked 2nd on USA Today's list of America's best haunted hotels. The extensive renovation may have led to the supposed rise in ghostly activity. Legend has it that 19th century artifacts weren't the only things discovered when construction workers entered the hotel's sealed upper floors. They also found bones under the floorboards that may have belonged to Union soldiers. Nope, time to go. The rumor's never been confirmed, but guests have reported seeing ghosts of soldiers with amputated limbs, and room 414 is allegedly plagued by the odor of rotting flesh. Do not disturb, indeed. I knew that the Roosevelt was going to be on here. I was kind of hoping that the Limp Mansion would be, but it's not. I love the Limp Mansion, y'all know. I did a video on that if you want to check it out. I'll link it down below. The Hollywood Roosevelt in Los Angeles was built with partial funding from actors Douglas trumpet and recite his lines out loud while walking the corridor outside of his room. According to hotel security, many guests have called with noise complaints about the people in Cliff's old room, but every time security guards have checked, the room has been empty. In 1996, the hotel celebrated what would have been the 53rd wedding anniversary of Gable and Lombard. She passed away in a plane crash in 1942, and he died in 1960. By holding a seance in the couple's old penthouse, renamed the Gable-Lombard Suite. In an attempt to summon their spirits, Carol Lombard reportedly made an appearance decked out in a pink dress and diamond earrings. That is so cool. The Hay Adams in Washington, D.C. I don't know this one. I think 3 more, guys, and then we'll be on to chapter 3, which is Erie Ghost Towns. The Hay Adams, the Pew Arts Landmark, which sits directly across Lafayette Park from the White House, is where Barack Obama stayed with his family before his presidential inauguration in 2009, where Ronald Reagan dined with his wife Nancy before his in 1981. Besides political dignitaries, a list of guests over the years have included Ethel Barrymore, Amelia Earhart, Rex Harrison, Sinclair Lewis, and Charles Lindbergh. More than just a place to stay, the Hay Adams is as worthy a monument status as any memorial in a city rife with them. The hotel was built in 1928 on the site once graced by the grand Romanesque homes of close friends John Hay and Henry Adams. Hay had been the personal secretary to Abraham Lincoln and also served as Secretary of State and the U.S. Ambassador to the U.K. Adams, a descendant of President John Adams and John Quincy Adams, was a historian and a Harvard professor. Almost from the time the houses were built in 1884, the Hay and Adams residences became hubs of the social and intellectual scenes in the nation's capital. Along with their wives Clara Hay and Marion Clover Hooper Adams, the 2 men hosted symposiums on literature, art, science, and politics. They entertained famous guests, among them Teddy Roosevelt, Mark Twain, and Henry James. But tragedy lurked beneath the glamour. One Sunday morning in early December 1885, Clover Adams, who had fallen into a deep depression after her father's death, took her own life by ingesting potassium cyanide. Apparently, her troubled spirit has never left. Today, her ghost is reportedly most often found roaming the 4th floor of the Hay Adams. Locked doors will mysteriously open and close on their own. Staff and guests have heard the sounds of a woman crying softly in a room or stairwell. Housekeepers in empty rooms will also sometimes hear the voice of a woman whispering, "What do you want?" and calling them by their names, even. Hotel Alex Johnson, Rapid City, South Dakota. Never heard of it. The Driscoll. I've heard of the Driscoll. Alright. Hotel Alex Johnson. Built in 1928 by, you guessed it, Alex Johnson, the vice president of the Chicago and Northwestern Railway. This 11-story German Tudor is full of symbolism. The architectural style was selected because of the large influx of German immigrants in the Dakotas, while inside, especially the grand lobby, accents of Native American heritage are everywhere, especially in the symbols on the original brick of the lobby floor. The place is also reportedly full of ghosts. The most well-known of them is the Lady in White. According to local legend, at some point in the 70s, a young woman killed herself on her wedding night by jumping out of the window of room 812. Guests and staff have reported seeing her spirit wandering on the 8th floor. And in the room, the window is often mysteriously found open in the morning. The drawers in the dresser are sometimes taken out, turned upside down, and put back. She's not the only ghost on the 8th floor, though. Some guests have reported hearing a young girl giggling in the hallways. This spirit is also known to knock on doors. One of the hotel's other permanent spirits is Alex Johnson himself, who died in 1938, but has apparently stayed behind to make sure things run smoothly. arches, cables, balconies, columns, busts, and other carvings. He spared no expense and spent $400,000, the equivalent to about $12.5 million in 2022, building it. When he lost his fortune 2 years later, he was forced to sell. The Driscoll has changed hands many times since then and has even been on the verge of extinction on a few occasions. What remains consistent in the hotel's history is the legend that the Driscoll is haunted. It's reputed to be home to more than a dozen ghosts, including Driscoll himself, as well as 2 brides, both of whom reportedly took their own lives in room 525. Don't stay in that room. The first one unalived herself after her fiancé called off their wedding. She can be seen roaming the halls dressed in a Victorian gown. The second, after having been also jilted, shot herself in 1991 after going on a shopping spree with her ex's credit card. Good for you, girl. She's been seen carrying bags or a pistol before vanishing into room 525. And I will pick this up soon with chapter 3. Oh, it looks like my computer froze again.